Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and we have a unique company to look at for our industry limelight this round, Near Space Labs. And here with me are two amazing individuals from Near Space Labs, Natalia Farhad Matamed. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I did it again. Natalia Farhad Matamed and Ignacy Yuk. So for both of you, thank you for joining us. And both of you have unique roles in the company. Natalia, you're the head of business development, and Ignacy, you're the CTO of Near Space Labs. Would you mind both introducing yourself? And let's get started with knowing a lot more about your company.
Sure, sounds good. I can kick it off. I'm Natalia, head of business development at Near Space Labs. I've been with the company for a little bit over a year, and my background is mostly consumer tech, so Twitter and Slack and LinkedIn. And I'm excited to share what we do with our company today.
And I'm Ignacy. I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I'm also one of the co-founders of the company, which we started in 2017 in New York. And now we've grown over 17 people. My background is space systems engineering. So in here in the company, we have quite a complex technology stack. We'll go over it. We build hardware, and we also deploy software and data as a solution. So a lot of interesting things to build and that we've built over the last years.
Perfect. That's amazing. So how would you like to get started with getting to know your company? Do you have a deck for us to get going, Natalia?
We do, yes. It's a very exciting deck, and I can go ahead and screen share and get us kicked off if that works.
Perfect. Audience, please stand by as we make that transition. Go ahead and screen share, and I'll set you up.
All right.
Hold on just a second. Let me bring it up on the screen.
Okay.
And when you're done, just give myself, Ignacy, a cue, and I'll bring us both back on the screen after you're done. So stand by.
Okay. Fantastic. Are you seeing my screen? Let's see.
I'll pop back in. The floor is all yours.
Pop back in. Yeah. The only thing is I lost my screen, or my deck rather, and I'm trying to figure out where it went so I can actually go to the next slide.
On the desktop. Okay.
Yeah.
Stand by, everybody, while we work out these technical difficulties.
Let me try this one more time. All right.
Just a second. Let me bring it up.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. Let me hit present. And now do you see my screen?
We do. And I'm just going to leave Ignacy and myself up on the screen there while you go ahead and talk. So go for it.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time today. I appreciate it. We're excited to tell you about Near Space Labs and what we do. All of the imagery in our deck is our own. So what you're seeing here, this beautiful landscape, is what we've captured. And just as like a little bit of background, so we're an imagery company. What that means is we take pictures of the planet and we share it with our customers. The imagery is primarily in the US with a little bit of Spain. But our mission here is to help you track your assets and change really across the world. And our company is, as Ignacy mentioned earlier, about 17 people. So we have three co-founders, Rima, Ignacy, and Albert. And sorry, I'm actually not used to this double screen. I just got a screen the other day. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's over here. But Rima sits at our headquarters in Brooklyn, and Ignacy and Albert sit over in Barcelona. Ignacy is our CTO, and Albert is our chief engineer. And David below is our head of data engineering. And then I am head of business development. And together we bring a wide variety of experiences to the company. And we've worked at a couple of different companies. So together our experiences will hopefully bring together an amazing geospatial product as we push into the world today. And the agenda that I have for this deck are our technology and capabilities, the use cases that we serve, what is tasking and how we do it, the coverage that we provide, the access, and then also our pricing. And I'll say our pricing is actually available on our website if you did want to take a look and take a peek, but it is also a slide in this deck. So without further ado, our technology. So we fly stratospheric balloons, and what that means is hardware that is proprietary to us. We have built it, we own and operate it, we have operations teams, and what they do is they take our balloon equipment, they launch it into the stratosphere. The balloons will then fly for about 2 to 5 hours. The hardware lands, we retrieve the equipment, and we upload it into the cloud. And then we georeference it, process it, and make it available via our API. So all in all, it takes a couple of hours for us to do. It's super seamless. And our stratospheric balloons are zero emissions, which is really cool. We have a fleet in the US, and we have a small fleet in Spain, and they're fairly easy to make too. We often joke that, you know, they're tiny, they fit into a suitcase, and they're easy to ship across the world. And where they actually fly is the stratosphere. So it's 2 times higher than an airplane, a lot lower than a satellite. And there's a couple of differentiators when it comes to us and our, you know, the different platforms out there. So we are physically lower to the ground, which means that our resolution automatically, higher resolution is easier for us to get because we're not as high as a satellite. We fly a lot longer than drones. So drones will only fly for about 30 minutes, whereas we fly for 2 to 5 hours. And then airplanes, when they go for collections, they actually zigzag back and forth, and they actually put out a lot of emissions into the air. We're not like that. We can capture up to 1,000 square kilometers with one flight, and it's pretty easy for us to get. So we are in a little bit of a niche compared to the other platforms that you've seen out there. But actually, balloon technology is pretty old. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but what we're doing is bringing this innovative sort of different way of approaching it and capturing imagery. And we're approaching this with sort of 3 different value sets. So the first is just high resolution. And what high resolution means today is 22 to 30 centimeters. We're actually launching even a higher resolution, and we want to bring that resolution to you when you need it. So that high frequency piece is super important to us. It either can mean that we launch multiple balloons in one day or a balloon a day. It really is up to the mission and what the customer is trying to achieve. But we're very good about tailoring that time of day and the flight to the customer needs, instead of just saying, hey, you're going to get your imagery in the next 3 months. And then on the affordability piece, so we fly balloons, there's no gas, there's no pilots, and that means that we are lower in cost than some of the other operations out there, and we can pass those savings on to our customer, which is really great for them. And then we come to the resolution. So as I mentioned, we have 22 to 30 centimeter resolution today. What you can see with that are cars, street center lines, pipelines, HVACs. A lot of our customers want even higher resolution to see things like building materials, like roof materials. They want to see potholes in the road. So what we're doing is developing even higher resolution, about 7 to 10 centimeters that we'll be launching in Q3. And the reason why it's a range is because we can actually adjust the height of the balloon. So if you come to us and you say, hey, Natalia, we really need 25 centimeter imagery, what we'll do is we'll programmatically adjust the height of the balloon so it maintains that flight, so it keeps that high resolution consistent, and we deliver you that imagery. And it's the same with the 7 to 10 centimeters. And this is what you get to see. So high level of detail. If you zoom in, you can again see those cars and street details, but not like the actual, you know, like the small pothole that you might need to repair. But you can see a lot of things. One thing too that you can see is livestock, cows. So, you know, you can't really see, you know, the expressions on their faces, but you are able to detect that they are an animal, especially if you're flying over something like ranch land. And then on the when it matters piece. So we fly in the stratosphere, as I mentioned earlier. That means that there are less regulations. So we're not competing with commercial airspace and with airplanes. So we can fly post-catastrophe a lot easier than some of the other solutions out there. And it's near real-time delivery, meaning that we have to land the equipment and then we upload it to the cloud. So it's not streaming, from the stratosphere. I think that'll be a piece that we work on at some point down the line. Not to make any promises too soon, but it is something that we get requested about a lot. And then we can tailor the flight to the time of day. Now, mind you, we are still weather dependent. So if it's a cloudy day, we're going to need to wait a couple of hours in order to fly. But if it's clear sky and all's good, then we can fly, let's say, at 3 p.m. to capture those long shadows, or we can fly at noon. It really depends on what the customer is asking for and what they need. And we capture up to 1,000 square kilometers per flight, which is a very large area. And what this is really good for is to see different neighborhoods, how things are in relation to each other, where an airport is, where construction is. So not only can you, see a wide swath of land, but then you can also drill down into the specific parts of it too. And a couple things you can do with imagery. So we can fly over airports, which not a lot of other solutions can, again, for that FAA piece. So we can monitor things like hubs and parking lots, different assets across the country. We can look at infrastructure. So whether it's looking at, let's say, fracking pads or oil pads to see what, the levels of oil is in different tanks, to see what activity is happening. We can look at water plants. So critical infrastructure and utilities is an area that we, that we fly for. We have customers in those sectors. And what we're currently building is a pre and post catastrophe solution. What that means is that we would fly before, during, and after different events like wildfires or tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes. So we have a team today. They sit in Texas, so they're pretty mobile and nimble around the country. What we're going to do is have a team stationed in California during the wildfire season this year, which I really hope, as a Californian, I hope that it's not terrible, but based on the press that's been coming out recently, it sounds like it's going to be another dry year. But what we want to do is really be able to enable our customers to see imagery that's taken before and then the effects of it after an event. And this serves a wide variety of verticals, from insurance to conservation, and everything in between. So that's what we're doing on the post-cat front. We get a lot of questions around flying during a fire, which we can technically. The only thing is, if there is a lot of smoke, you might not be able to see what it is that you need to see, but we are absolutely open to it, and we are able to do that. And to talk about tasking. So there's, kind of two buckets of imagery that we work with, right? One is our archived imagery, areas we've already flown, and then this is our tasked imagery. So when it comes to tasking, you'd basically come to us and say, hey, Natalia and Ignacy, I need this area flown. You send us a shapefile. Once you give us a tasking request, then, we ideally like for it to be at least a few weeks or a few months in advance so we can schedule you accordingly. But after that is scheduled and we fly for you, just for a regular request, we'll deliver it in via our API or GeoTIFFs between 48 hours and 1 week. Now, if you need that imagery sooner, we can talk about getting it to you in under 48 hours. But then on the post-catastrophe front, if you say, hey, Natalia, we need you guys to fly, let's say, after this wildfire in a couple of days or ASAP, we will mobilize within a few days and then get you that imagery in under 24 hours. So we're setting up our team to be able to do this. Again, it's a huge demand from our customers because the Earth is changing quite quickly, and we want to be able to keep up with that pace of change. And we're a low waste product. So our hardware has no emissions. It is all wind powered, which makes us a really good option for anything with smart cities or with initiatives that are trying to reduce their carbon efforts or their waste, and then also conservation too. And the customer experience is great. We're a startup, so we want to make sure that our customers are super happy. We give them a really high level of customer support. It's a very white gloved experience because we really want to make sure that they get their imagery on time and it's what they need and they can use it appropriately. Our rates are cheaper than other providers, and that is because, again, as I said earlier, we operate balloons and they are a lot cheaper than other solutions. We're not launching $300 million satellites in this space, so we can be much more cost effective for different industries. And then there's that being able to really control the time of day or the day that, or the month that you want us to get your imagery in. And conservation groups find this very, very helpful. And then we have our coverage. So our coverage, as I mentioned, is primarily in the US, but we know half of our team sits in Barcelona, so we do have some coverage in Spain. Where we have flown to date primarily is Texas, and we've done some Arizona. And then more recently, we captured areas in California, so Fresno, Los Angeles, and the area around Salton Sea. And upcoming is like a few days from now, but we're going to be headed to Virginia here soon. We'll be flying in the DC area, Michigan, New York, New Jersey, and Houston. And I'll say here, the biggest parameter to our flights is really around open water. So if you're interested in having us fly, let's say in Florida, great, we'll do it for you in the fall. We just need to make a couple of hardware tweaks so our balloons don't land in the open ocean, which is not something that we want today. But that is really the only parameter when it comes to our hardware and our Swifties. And I might not have said this earlier, but we call our balloons Swifties. That's what their nickname is internally and externally too. And then easy to access. So there's a couple of ways you can get our imagery. The first is via our API. We have a GitHub, so if you want to play with our endpoint, you can go on to GitHub, or I can send you the link and we can send you the endpoint and credentials. We do have partners, so Esri is one of our partners. We are building an ArcGIS integration, and then we have other strategic platform partners. And a lot of these are just vertical specific, so insurance, conservation, geospatial. And then if you don't want to do anything via an API or an integration or a different platform, then we're happy to send you a folder of GeoTIFFs, and you can directly download them and then upload them into a different platform if you so choose. So there's a couple of ways you can access this imagery. And we have reached my last slide. So pricing is where I will leave you. Our pricing, as I said, is on the website. It starts at about $50 per square kilometer. It goes down to $25, and then it goes down to $10. It's all volume based. So if you're looking at purchasing, under 75 square kilometers, you'd be paying that $50 amount. And then if you wanted 75 square kilometers and up, it's 25. And then if you need even more imagery, then the price drops. I would say the biggest thing to note about this first is that it's only applicable to our 22 to 30 centimeter imagery. So the 7 to 10 centimeter imagery that I mentioned earlier, the pricing for that is not public yet. But if you are interested, then contact me, we can talk about it. The other caveat to this is that it doesn't reflect frequency. So if you need us to fly over an area, let's say once a week or a couple times in a day, once a week, I guess, for multiple weeks, then the pricing here would shift just slightly because there'd be some more sophisticated operations about it. But for the most part, this is what our prices would look like, for that resolution. So it's pretty straightforward. I will say the cost of tasking us is the same as our archived imagery. So that's one of the big benefits of working with us, is that we just make things as super transparent and easy as possible, so you don't have any guesswork when it comes to that. And that is the end of this deck. So if you have any questions, I am here to answer them all. And if I don't know, Ignacy is here to answer them all.
Perfect. Well, we do have a couple questions that come in. First, just to kind of piggyback on the pricing real quick. Now, is that new tasking or is that archive tasking prices? For example, is the imagery?
Yeah.
Or is it just across
it's all of it. It's across the board.
It's all of it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I noticed that just quickly looking at your pricing, that at least the standard, you can have a minimum purchase of 1 square kilometer for, just pay $50 for 1 square kilometer, correct? Okay.
Correct. I would say I'm going to add a little caveat to that, though. I would say in more recent months, we have realized that we do need a minimum area to be purchased out of one of our flights. So it'd be a little bit of a waste if we captured 1,000 square kilometers and someone only bought 1 square kilometer out of that. So what we have established more recently is a 20 square kilometer minimum that is not on the website yet. We're actually doing some website updates that will be apparent, I think, in the next 2 weeks. So there is that little asterisk when it comes to the pricing.
It would be for that minimum pricing for 25 square kilometers, and that's pretty much we'll call it the electro-optical satellite imagery standard. Is the 25 square kilometers is the minimum for, for example, Airbus and Maxar and those prices normally range from $300 to $500 per 25 square kilometers for archive imagery older than 3 to 6 months. So that's kind of the baseline where I'm kind of comparing it to. Of course, when new tasking for those satellites normally range from anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 for new tasking. So it's the because your pricing applies to all the imagery. That's kind of where I'm trying to draw the line to. Well, do you care how old it is, or do you do you care about the new tasking? So do you have a model for populating a bigger archive eventually? To help lower the pricing point for individuals at some point?
Probably, yeah. I mean, we've only been flying commercially for a year, and so our archive, database is fairly limited in scope.
Yeah.
And I think as we build that out, and as we find different values for different buckets of imagery, there will be some sort of price differentiation. But we're just getting started. We want to keep things simple, so everything is sort of flat across the board. I will say though, I thought that Airbus's minimum was closer to 100 square kilometers. I feel like I've seen documentation that was higher.
For the SAR, that's likely correct, but for the EO, it's much lower.
Got it.
It's close to on par with Maxar and even Planets for that matter. But with that said, I don't want to dwell too much on the pricing. I think your pricing is really interesting. It's a different business model, especially when it comes down to, once again, near space solution that you're presenting. I am actually curious about the operation deployment of this, right? What's the dwell time of a balloon? You said it depends on the use case. Do we set up 1 balloons or 2 balloons, or what the mission is? How long can a balloon stay up before you have to launch another one to persist over a certain area if the customer wants to keep on imaging?
Yeah, Ignacio, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the key ideas is that we can flexibly deploy depending on customer demands. And as you said, there's going to be very different time requirements. Like, some users will want a certain revisit rate that is daily or monthly. Some people will want a very long time series over a day, like, persistent or near persistent. Some people will want more coverage, and all those things can be adjusted and tweaked and basically tailored to with the way we operate. And the way we operate is we release this vehicle with just a crew of 2 people, and it just requires, very small space, a few square feet, just by the side of the road. You can do it. So it operationally looks much more like a drone, right? And I have to make this point so you can really understand the flexibility I'm talking about. So it's quite a nimble operation, and then the balloon will ascend and stay flying for in between, like the maximum autonomy we have 5 hours. We typically do a couple hours, 3 hours, and then we would fly over the area of interest, do about 50 kilometers on a 20-kilometer swath. So that's 20 by 50, 1,000 square kilometers image. And then we're going to land the vehicle, retrieve the payload, etc., which is good for our cost model. So basically, if that's all, that's all. And then we have captured that. And the next day we launch another or whatever the customer needs.
So it's basically a day-by-day operation at that point.
Yes.
If you want multi-days, you launch 1 balloon per day yeah.
That's a typical thing. But when we have situations like somebody wants, like, I want to see that, I'm just making an example, the traffic over Austin every hour, right? So then, we're going to keep launching more vehicles because we have launched
overlapping the time periods. I see.
We have launched 2, 3, 4 vehicles a day. We typically do that for coverage. Like, people want more than 1,000 square kilometers. So we're going to launch several, over an area spread and have larger coverage taken on that day. like county size, let's say. But at the same thing, we can do just on time series and just fly over the same target. And every balloon will have, because of the camera and the scanning angle, will have a persistence over target of half an hour, right? And then you're going to shoot the next one. So you're going to have a map of Austin at 9 a.m., 10:30, 12 a.m., and you can keep doing that.
That's once again the amazingly flexible plan there for what you have. Is there a limit to how many balloons that you have right now for a customer request?
So yeah, it depends on the fleet we have available currently. So we are happy to, if we have a request, we will assess it, and yeah, there might be a limit depending on the fleet availability at the moment, but those are relatively inexpensively to build a vehicle. So we also, if we understand there's going to be a sustained need for a specific customer or project to have X number of vehicles, and we know that in advance, it is not a big issue to build more vehicles. So again, it's not a development cycle of years or months. Like, once we set up to build one, actually takes a couple of weeks per unit, and we can have a throughput of more than one. So long story short, if your project is going to need, 5 vehicles, 10 vehicles, 20 vehicles, we can accommodate that.
So how you mentioned before that you have to recalibrate these things when you're closer to, ocean water. You mentioned like Florida, for example. How planned or how predictable is it of where these things will actually land? Do you have how big of an area? And I'm really curious from a technical standpoint, how you were able to, wow, we have to, have to drive over here, or is it like chasing tornadoes? You have to, go across the state to try and find this thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we get that question very often. So it's a chasing tornadoes where you know exactly where the tornado is going to go. So it's remarkably possible and not straightforward. We have our models and our empirical data, but we've developed good modeling to understand where it's gonna not only land but also fly over, because you have to know what you're gonna cover. So then we're gonna release, and also Natalia mentioned before, we can adjust the altitude. So with these two degrees of freedom, like adjusting the release point and the altitude where the balloon is gonna cruise, you can actually know very well and tailor where it's gonna go and where it's gonna land. Now, if it's a coastal line, as Natalia said, we're developing the technology because some coastal cases are more difficult than others. Florida is infamously difficult for the ballooning community because there's water on the right and on the left and below, and a lot of swamps in the north too. So what we're working on is on the guidance of the landing, so that we are able to avoid the water and still land on the coastline, right?
Perfect. No, that's as I said, I'm really fascinating in that mission planning aspect of it. I think there's a really good story to tell there. Especially, get some winds that blow it out, or how you deal with property owners trying to retrieve these balloons. Sometimes I'm sure you got some maybe interesting stories to tell there. We do have one question from the audience that came in as well, asking about how broad your agricultural use cases are, and can you share that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tackle those, and Ignacy, feel free to chime in. We've talked a lot to different groups about the agriculture use case, but we've actually flown over a lot of agricultural land. But the thing that we're facing with this industry is really the need for a near infrared sensor. So we haven't gotten too deep with these yet, but we have a ton of imagery, in case anyone wants to buy it. But I would say our experience with the agricultural vertical it's not fully fleshed out yet. I think that we need a lot of it's super seasonal. A lot of it's very specific to certain areas, certain crops. Like we've talked to, this isn't quite agriculture, but like wineries who are just like, there's a 2-week window where we need imagery on these exact days. And I think that it's something we would like to tackle and do, but with the current batch of customers we have, none of them are agriculture. But we've had a lot of those conversations. I think we just need to get our technology into a place to really serve that vertical. I don't know, Ignacy, if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I'm also I'm coming from the aerospace industry and satellite Earth observation, and agriculture is one of the main or key cases that, in the satellite industry we've been working on. And then, I came to the balloon industry thinking, that's figured out. We have a lot of massive land coverage coming from satellites, and they have all the different infrared bands and all the data analytics are in place. And then you actually talk to people trying to derive these things, and they're like, we still would like more resolution. You would think that 5 meters is enough for my field. No, I want to see plant level now. And I have the other thing, it works. I have the 3 meters and I have the 1 meter, but now I want to see plant level also in infrared, right? And all these things are very interesting, and they're pointing at, we're gonna eventually also work in this space. And in the roadmap is about adding this infrared band, so doing 4-band imaging, RGB and the infrared, which we don't have yet, and it brings key value to that case.
Absolutely, driving your roadmap even further with some of these requests.
100%.
That's very, very, very fascinating there. And I know, being in St. Louis, ironically, the agricultural imagery business is something of high note here. So let's see, your balloon names are Swifties. Hey, how did you come up with that name?
Ignacio, this is all you. This predates me.
Yeah, these are early days of the company. So there's this bird called the Swift. And this bird is one, I think, with the highest records of altitude of any bird out there. They go pretty high. I don't think they reach the stratosphere, but they're one of the highest flying birds. So that was the original inspiration. And I also like the name. It's dynamic. It gives this idea of quick, fast, and that's how we wanted to, position our data and our company as a solution that has, the timeliness is of essence, and is one of the key value propositions.
Yeah, I know it's a side tangent, but it's always a fascinating narrative how people derive their names. With Planet, they have their Dove satellites, for example, and it's not simply as vanilla or factory as GeoEye-1 or Worldview, for example, as some of the bigger guys. But some of the more innovative folks have more very fascinating narratives and how they've created these things, or some type of inspiration behind their platforms. It's always nice to hear what yours is. One of the more technical questions I've gotten on the side from an individual who was listening in is, as they were hearing about your coverage, you're explaining about the agriculture, how you have a lot of imagery available that might be available for purchase. How does viewing, do you have shape files available either publicly or through some means that people can look up where you have imagery already available that they can purchase?
Yeah, we can do it a couple ways. We can share footprints of where we've flown. We can share files, whatever is easier for the person to work with. We can, either one. I don't know if Ignacio, you want to build on that.
Yeah, we can share the UKT or KML, so with our existing coverage and also projected coverage.
How much of the customer bought data goes into what you resell to other customers? Is for example, do you have a lot of customers who ask for, hey, I don't want this publicly available. This is my silo data.
Yeah, we have some. Yeah, we have some, but others are totally fine. For us to resell that imagery. I would say we haven't come across a ton of cases where they're like, no, this is absolutely proprietary. But if it is, then we make that happen. But our agreement is structured such that they're just licensing our content. So if it is something they want to, us to not resell, then we would specify that in our agreement with them.
And I also want to add on the agreement side, I think it's an important product point that our licensing agreement allows and empowers users to do derivative products and actually sell the derivative products of the imagery, so they can add their analytics on top. That's important for a lot of our partners and for many modern usages of imaging. So we are totally aligned with that.
Well, that is a big differentiator. A lot of the traditional providers have, I'd say, overcomplicated licensing to make it very, very difficult and a deterrent in some ways, unintentionally, for folks to even buy their imagery on that front. Well, I would like to say thank you all for coming on, but I want to put it out there as well. Is there any other things on your roadmap or anything else that you'd like to kind of mention before we wrap things up? Just to kind of recap, currently your high resolution, you shoot between 22 and 30 centimeters right now. And by Q3, you're going to have 7 to 10 centimeter capability down the road. So that's really, really fascinating. As well, it sounded like you have infrared coming down the pipeline at some point in the future, which is also a very exciting aspect for a lot of different reasons. So with that said, the floor is yours for any last minute tidbits you'd like to mention about the company and where you'd like to be before we wrap up.
Sure. I mean, on the product front, I will defer to Ignacy if there's anything else that he wants to add.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the roadmap, but I think the thing I want to mention most importantly, and hopefully the audience will appreciate, is we're partnered with Esri and ArcGIS, and we are about to launch. And if anyone wants to be a beta tester, we actually can already release that. And we're about to launch an integration where you can pull our data from ArcGIS Pro. And that's going to help a lot of users and GIS users, that you can then use our data, no code. You just have a nice application. You can query by date, area. So that's one of the big things that are happening in terms of product.
Can you clarify? So beta tester for the Esri integration, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we need eyeballs on it to make sure that, you know, it's seamless and people can do what they need to do with our imagery. So if anybody wants to test it out and help us do that, they are welcome to.
Well, since you're partnered with Esri, getting that integrated, is there any hopes to kind of make some type of plugin as well for the open source side of things for applications such as QGIS, for example? There's a big community that likes working outside of Esri that takes advantage of geospatial tools and applications, and the open source community is really heavy into using, well, Esri-like tools, you know, like QGIS or Postgres or anything that they have to integrate within other open source applications within AWS or the Google Cloud environments too.
Yeah, so I'm gonna breaking news, Adam. So internally, from the early days, we have a QGIS integration, and we examine a lot of our data with QGIS. So yeah, it's gonna be, at some point we're gonna actually release that, and we're gonna support the QGIS community too, because it's been a great software for us to use, and hopefully people can enjoy Near Space Labs data also in QGIS. So absolutely.
Thanks for that clarification. That's awesome news. Are you all going to be at the big GeoInt Symposium this year?
Potentially. I think that we haven't quite wrapped our heads around events yet, and in real life versus virtual. But yes, I think we should probably, now that the world is getting back to normal. But yes, will you be there? I'm assuming you will.
Absolutely. We cover the event as much as we can. One reason I try to keep up with St. Louis, because that's where the GeoInt Symposium is going to be this year. So and if you do show up, I can't wait to check out your latest innovations by October, and where you are as a company, and hear the just how far you've come. So with that said, thank you both for coming on and helping our audience learn more about Near Space Labs. And we'll talk to everybody next time. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.